Another late night review. It is 10:43 on a Saturday night, and it was recently brought to my attention, I did not know about this, that Wes Anderson had agreed to make several Roald Dahl adaptations for Netflix. Short stories that are going to be novella-type films. So this particular film, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, is taken from a 7 short story compilation of Roald Dahl that was released in 1977. Coincidentally enough, that is the year that my dad graduated from high school. The original book is called The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and 6 More. So there's 7 stories total in that book. Some of them are autobiographical. So he adapted this film, which has a 39-minute runtime, which we're going to discuss tonight. And he also agreed to do this other short story by Dahl called The Swan, as well as this other film called Poison by Dahl and The Rat Catcher, also by Dahl. Straight to Netflix, but this kind of seems to be the style of movie that he has done a lot more of recently. To me, his last great film that I really enjoyed was The Grand Budapest Hotel. That was like a full feature-length film, but although he did kind of do some mixed-use formats in that film, there was some animation, I think, from what I... No, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of The French Dispatch. That movie was... I wasn't doing video reviews at the time. I saw a lot of movies, but I wasn't talking about them on the YouTubes. So if you go back and look at my wife and I's review of Asteroid City, I'll put the link in the description. And the same thing with The French Dispatch. It was just okay for me. But that in particular film, The French Dispatch, was like a bunch of short stories all into one film, kind of like the last Coen Brothers movie that they did together, which I believe was also a Netflix movie, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, among a few other films. So he's kind of doing these shorter films. I liked it a lot. It's not a 5 out of 5. We'll get to that later, but I liked that it was filmed in like a 4:3 aspect ratio. So if a lot of those nostalgic people want to make copies on VHS, which is a huge thing right now, a lot of people of my generation, kids who grew up in the 90s, they're making their own slipcase boxes and their own VHSs of modern movies. So this movie would translate well onto a VHS format. Anyway, 2023, started production in 2022. Again, directed by Wes Anderson, and I am 4 out of 5 on this film. It's one of my favorites of his, like I mentioned earlier, since Grand Budapest Hotel. IMDb, 7.5 out of 10. Critics are loving this movie. Rotten Tomatoes, 95%. And Google users are also very high, 89%. It was good, but it didn't speak to me like the last film that I reviewed, which was A Bronx Tale. But you can't compare these type of movies. One's kind of like an allegorical movie. This kind of goes back to how he was doing Asteroid City, where it's like a lot of stage play type of stuff. To me, this movie played out like it was a theatrical play, and then there was like a lot of segments where they're literally just, it seemed like they were just reading from the book, and then he said, and then this happened, and that kind of annoyed me, but whatever, I get what they were doing. So anyway, that's the way that was his vision. Beautiful set design as always. It's just perfect. Anderson is perfect with his set design and construction. It's like art. Movies are art, but like his whole set design is like so perfect, and like how he does the cutaway scenes, which kind of like gives you that you're watching a play vibe where he's rolling sets across. He's having stage hands come in and do certain things while you're watching the movie. There's a lot going on. Benedict Cumberbatch, Ralph Fiennes, great actors in this movie. And it was just an enjoyable... Can you call it a movie at 39 minutes? It was like a made-for-TV movie. To like back in the days of old, you would watch those made-for-TV movies. Maybe they'd be an hour and a half with commercials, but 39-minute runtime. I look forward to seeing all of his other adaptations. I know that Anderson does a lot of his own original stories, so this is kind of cool that he's doing something like this. And I would be interested to read the actual book of the 7 stories, because it talks about his real life stuff, like how he was a fighter pilot in World War II and how he kind of got his break into being a writer. He had written a story to be published by and rewritten by somebody else, but then they felt that it was so good that it ended up getting published in the Saturday Evening Post, and thus started his writing career. And what I really liked, I think one of my favorite parts of this film was the recreation of his little gypsy hut, as they called it. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that interview with him for the BBC in the late 70s, where he's there smoking and drinking tea, and on just note paper, he hand wrote his manuscripts there in that little hut in his country villa or wherever he lived. I hear a stirring, a bump in the night, and I'm freaked out. Anyway, I'm the only one awake. So bear with me a second while I step out of frame. My neighbor's going through his gate, which is right outside my window, and it scared me. Anyway, back to the review. That pops up in my Facebook memories all the time, the BBC interview. And he just seems so cozy, doll we're talking about. And I like how they translated that and recreated that for the beginning of this movie. So you kind of see him visualizing it and him doing his craft. And I'm the same way. I'm sitting here at my little desk that I got for $40 off of Facebook Marketplace from some rando in San Jose with printer paper on my $25 Smith Corona, one of the many typewriters that I own, but I prefer the Smith Corona because the margins are on the outside, and my actual handwriting is terrible. So a lot of the times when I write, it's quicker and easier, and I can fit more in a small section by typing it out. Am I an author? No, but I do like to write, and it stimulates the mind. And so too Anderson, he is great at translating these written words into a visual picture for all of us. And that I am thankful for. I'm sorry I'm not 5 out of 5 if I offend the Anderson lover, but his last couple of films have just been okay for me, and I was looking for that next movie to be a 5 out of 5 like Grand Budapest. This was good, but I wanted more. And I wanted it to be more of a full-length feature film, which it could have been, because I read a lot about the details from the other film, but, he's doing this thing for Netflix, and he's just going boom, 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 boom with all these little novellas. So thanks for coming along. I know that I have a few of you out there who have been following me for a while, and I really appreciate you. Maybe one of these days I'll even throw up a Patreon and see what that does. Until next time, we'll see you then. Until it's free, keep tuning in.